Hello, boys and girls. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode of The Tim Ferriss Show, where it is my job to attempt to deconstruct world-class performers of all different types, from all different disciplines, to give you techniques, perhaps tactics, favorite books, training regimens even, recovery protocols even, that you can use. And my guests today are the best at what they do. Michael Phelps and Grant Hackett. They're very close friends. They were able to feed off of each other. Their shared stories are incredible. So the combination of the two on this podcast was really special. Now, let me read these bios and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Michael Phelps, you recognize his name on Twitter at Michael Phelps, is widely regarded as one of the greatest athletes of all time. He captured 28 medals, including a record-setting 23 gold medals, and set 39 world records over the course of his career. Phelps utilized his performance bonus for winning 8 gold medals in 2008 to establish the Michael Phelps Foundation, which promotes water safety, healthy living, physical and mental, and the pursuit of dreams. The foundation's signature program, IM, is a learn-to-swim, healthy living, and goal-setting curriculum based on the principles and tools Phelps utilized in his swimming career, and is available through the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and Special Olympics International. His advocacy for water safety and mental health has earned the recognition of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Champion of Youth, American Image Awards, that's the Humanitarian Award, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Special Recognition Award, the Ruderman Family Foundation, Morton E. Ruderman Award in Inclusion, and PR Week Health Influencer 50 and 2020 Communicator of the Year, among many others. Phelps served as an executive producer and featured talent in the HBO documentary The Weight of Gold, which explores the mental health challenges Olympic athletes often face, although it really extends to many more people and types of people than Olympic athletes. In addition, he has published 2 autobiographies, No Limits, subtitled The Will to Succeed, and Beneath the Surface, that were New York Times and USA Today bestsellers, and 1 children's book, How to Train with a T-Rex and Win 8 Gold Medals. You can find him online on Twitter, twitter.com/Michael Phelps, Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Phelps, and on Instagram at M_Phelps00. Grant Hackett on Instagram at Grant__Hackett. That's 2 underscores. So I'll give that to you again. At Grant__Hackett, represented and captained Australia in swimming at the Olympic Games. He collected a total of 58 medals over the course of his swimming career, with 26 gold at Olympic, Commonwealth, and World Championship levels, along with 16 world records. He remained unbeaten for 11 years in his pet event, the 1500 meter freestyle. That's just nuts. Grant also received prestigious honors such as the Order of Australia, the Centenary Medal, and the Australian Sports Medal. Grant is a member of the Sports Australia Hall of Fame and International Swimming Hall of Fame. His qualifications include also an Executive Master's of Business Administration with first-class honors, a Diploma of Business Law, and a Diploma of Financial Services. Grant is the CEO of Generation Life, an Australia-based investment firm managing more than $1.3 billion. So with all that said, please enjoy Michael Phelps and Grant Hackett. This episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. My God, am I in love with 8 Sleep. Good sleep is the ultimate game changer. More than 30% of Americans struggle with sleep, and I'm a member of that sad group. Temperature is one of the main causes of poor sleep, and heat has always been my nemesis. I've suffered for decades, tossing and turning, throwing blankets off, putting them back on, and repeating ad nauseum. But now I am falling asleep in record time, faster than ever. Why? Because I'm using a simple device called the Pod Pro Cover by 8 Sleep. It's the easiest and fastest way to sleep at the perfect temperature. It pairs dynamic cooling and heating with biometric tracking to offer the most advanced but most user-friendly solution on the market. I polled all of you guys on social media about the best tools for sleep, enhancing sleep, and 8 Sleep was by far and away the crowd favorite. I mean, people were just raving fans of this. So I used it, and here we are. Add the Pod Pro cover to your current mattress and start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It also splits your bed in half, so your partner can choose a totally different temperature. My girlfriend runs hot all the time. She doesn't need cooling. She loves the heat, and we can have our own bespoke temperatures on either side, which is exactly what we're doing. Now, for me, And for many people, the result, 8 Sleep users fall asleep up to 32% faster, reduce sleep interruptions by up to 40%, and get more restful sleep overall. I can personally attest to this because I track it in all sorts of ways. It's the total solution for enhanced recovery, so you can take on the next day feeling refreshed. And now, my dear listeners, that's you guys, you can get $250 off of the Pod Pro cover. That's a lot. Simply go to 8sleep.com/Tim or use code TIM. That's 8, all spelled out, EIGHT, sleep.com/Tim, or use coupon code TIM, TIM. 8sleep.com/Tim for $200 off your Pod Pro cover. This episode is brought to you by Butcherbox. Butcherbox makes it easy for you to get high-quality, humanely raised meat that you can trust. They deliver delicious 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage breed pork, and wild-caught seafood directly to your door. For me, in the past few weeks, I've cooked a ton of their salmon, as well as 2 delicious barbecue rib racks in the oven. Super simple. They were the most delicious pork ribs I've ever prepared, and my freezer is full of Butcherbox. When you become a member, you're joining a community focused on doing what's better for all. That means caring about the lives of animals, the livelihoods of farmers, treating our planet with respect, and enjoying better meals together. Butcherbox partners with folks, small farmers included, who believe in going above and beyond when it comes to caring for animals, the environment, and sustainability. And none of their meat is ever given antibiotics or added hormones. So how does it work? It's pretty simple. You choose your box and your delivery frequency. They offer 5 boxes, 4 curated box options, as well as the popular custom box. So you get exactly what you and or your family love. Box options and delivery frequencies can be customized to fit your needs. You can cancel at any time with no penalty. Butcherbox ships your order frozen for freshness and packed in an eco-friendly 100% recyclable box. It's easy, it's fast, it's convenient. I really, really enjoy it. And best of all, looking at the average cost, it works out to be less than $6 per meal. Get ready for game day or a cozy night in with Butcherbox. Right now, new members will get 1 rack of St. Louis-style ribs, 1 pack of bacon, and a pack of pulled pork for free in their first box by going to butcherbox.com/Tim. One more time, that's butcherbox.com/Tim. Optimal minimal.
At this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Now would seem an appropriate time.
What if I did the opposite?
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over metal endoskeleton. Ferriss Show.
Michael and Grant, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having us.
Thank
Of course.
you, Tim. Thank you. What's up, Grant?
Thrilled to have us all together. This was the Da Vinci Code of scheduling, the Fermat's last theorem of coordination, because we have people in every possible time zone and multiple countries. So I appreciate you guys being flexible with making it happen. And I thought we would start with difficult or particularly notable races. And I'd love to start with you, Grant, because I was confessing to both of you before we started, I enjoy swimming. I actually didn't even learn to swim until I was in my 30s, which is a whole separate story. But I really enjoy swimming, but I know very, very little about competition and the history of competitions and notable races and so on. Grant, can you please speak to and describe for people what happened in the 2004 Olympics in the 1500 meter freestyle?
Yeah, that was a particularly tough Olympics for me. That year, I actually got pneumonia at the start of the year because I was just overtraining. I got a little bit sick and never missed a session. And I used to do sort of 8K on average per session, and used to flog myself. And then I got pneumonia, went to hospital. That turned into a chronic chest infection because I didn't stop training as soon as I came out of hospital because I couldn't, because I'd missed the Olympic Games. And then when I got to the Olympics in Athens in 2004, one objective was to win 3 gold medals, and I got 2 gold medals, both by 0.1 of a second, 2 silver medals, by 0.1 of a second, and wasn't too happy about that. Then I raced the 1500 meter freestyle, and I actually had to do it with a partially collapsed lung on my left side because it was blocked with mucus for so long. that race, I probably pushed myself through more pain than I've ever had. And one of Michael's teammates, Larson Jensen, was breaking the American record, and by about 12 seconds doing a personal best time. And so it pushed me to the nth degree. And that was brutal. I came home, I went under a CAT scan, and they said, "Oh, there's a massive lump on your lungs. We're going to have to inject you with iodine just to see what's going on." And, they said, "Oh, it's a big ball." And they injected me with iodine. I had a look, and they said, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay." And I said, "What do you mean, is it okay?" And they said, "Well, your lower left lobe has got no oxygen for it for so long that it's actually just deflated, and it's just sitting up in a big ball. And I've got a huge lung capacity of 12.6 litres, and apparently that took something like a quarter of it off." So that race to win that gold medal was the most painful moment that I've ever had in my career. And but probably the most rewarding at the same time. But certainly after that, I promised I would never race like that again. And Michael knows how much of a sore spot that 4x2 freestyle relay was a few days before, where we lost by 0.1. He loves it.
So I've two follow-up questions related to this. The first is, you mentioned lung capacity, 12.6 liters. Do you have any idea, just as a point of reference, what average muggle heart capacity is? Like normie, as one of my Olympic friends put it, normies, what that is compared to a non-Olympic swimming champion lung capacity?
So when that was done, because I'm referring to actually the stats in 2004, it's 160% above what it should be for my height, 6'6", and my age at the time. So it was 12.63 liters, my total lung capacity. So it's one of those genetic things that helps.
It's at that level. It's with swimming and a lot of sports. It's like at the junior high level, you see all sorts of different body types, and then as you get a little bit higher, you see still different body types, but there's a point where they start to converge on very particular sets of physical characteristics. On the lung, so partially collapsed lung, that to most people listening, that just seems completely baffling, because so much of swimming would seem dependent on utilizing your full lung capacity. What did it feel like? You said painful, but what does it feel like to swim at max capacity with a partially collapsed lung?
It's not good, Tim. Let me tell you that. It's not the way I describe that race is like handcuffing someone to a treadmill, putting on a max incline, max speed, and then just going for 15 minutes. That was the intensity of the pain. Normally where I felt that intense pain at the 1,000-meter mark, I felt at the 500-meter mark in that race. And it's excruciating, those thresholds that you have to go through. So, to push myself through that. The funniest thing about that race, I hadn't lost it in 8 years at that particular point in time. And I was going into the last 100 meters, and it was the first time it actually turned with someone next to me with 100 meters to go. And I actually came home faster in the last 100 meters than what I did than when I broke the world record by 7 seconds 3 years earlier. So, it actually taught me the value of competition in my worst situation, that I can actually extrapolate or get more out of myself, even feeling like that. But the pain was, I actually said I'm going to retire. If I can't get better after those Olympics, I'm actually going to retire from the sport, because I didn't want to race like that again.
Wow. Were you doing lactate testing then, Hecky?
Yeah. We were doing.
Do you remember what it would have been after that?
It's funny. It was never that high after my 15, but I think I hit about a 12 after that, where the 200 I could hit a 13 or 14, and the 15 I'd normally be like a 9, but I produced a bit more there because the oxygen saturation wasn't going down into my blood. So it went up, and that's a good point. No one's actually ever mentioned that, MP.
Well, that's just something I snap think about, because me, I was always somebody who, and still am, just a numbers driven person. So that stuff always just sends little key messages, whether it's to me or to Bob or to Keenan, my trainer, of things we need to improve on or fix, or maybe what we need to get tested for too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that was the excruciating. But you still want to see stats afterwards. It's like the Olympics is over. That's the last day always of the Olympics. And, you would have been doing the 4x1 medley probably that day as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, you still want to do everything, see how quickly you remove the lactate out of your muscles after you cool down. And that's one thing that Michael and I always share is the stats. We can pull out any swimming time, any split, any world record split. We know it back to front.
I was going to continue with the tough race question, and Michael, you can feel free to go there first, but I also have a question about that training obsession, competitive drive, and also just the familiarity with the numbers, right? I do have some questions about that, but do you have a particularly tough race or competition that you'd like to mention, Michael?
I mean, the 200 fly, I'm really happy it was only 200 meters in 2016. Had it been 201 meters, I would have lost. So that one sticks out. Other than that, like I look back at, most of my races and I can say they were pretty much pain-free, but that was just because I was prepared. That literally is the only reason. So, I was probably 75, 80% of the time really prepared. And 2012 and like 10 to 12 were kind of my fake 65, 70%ish.
Let's talk about prep, since that's where I was going to head next. I'm looking at a quote from your coach, Michael, from 2003, and he's referring to both of you guys. He's asked about the similarities between the two of you. And he said, this is from an interview at some point, they both enjoy training. It's not an ordeal for them. They're both really aware of what's going on in practice in relation to their times, speed, where everyone is, and most importantly, where they are in training compared to their goals. And I'm sure you guys get questions about competitive drive all the time, so I don't want to obsess on that phrasing exactly. But is that familiarity with the numbers and that awareness common across other team members, or is that something that is abnormally developed in the two of you? And if so, do you have any theories on why that is?
I think like a lot of it really is just God-given feel and ability, right? Like, for me, like I'm somebody who is really a field swimmer, and I was taught, the process of it. So I was taught to swim as efficiently as I possibly could at all times. So, I think that's really what allowed me to be able to do the repeats and feel the exact times with the stroke counts or, whatever we were trying to do. But also just, for me, it was like training, I knew I had to be perfect if I ever wanted to do something that no one had ever done, right? Like I was trying to compete and do things that people had never seen before, period, in the Olympics and swimming. So it's like I had to, from a workout standpoint, I had to be as hungry as possible. And Bob kind of says jump, and I'm always saying how high. And I always wanted to break as many world records as I possibly could. So that's why I love training. And I know that you can ask Hackett, and I think he'd agree that you put the two of us in a pool together training, it is it's pretty much like we're going toe to toe, and no matter what it is, no matter what stroke it is, just basically trying to rip each other's head off and just the pure love and competition of what we do. I think that's something that made us very special. But like the feel, I think that's something that only 1, 2, 3, 4% of people, 5% of people in the top of all sports probably really have any idea what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It's quite funny. I think just when Michael was talking, then I started thinking of the movie Days of Thunder when they're in the wheelchair in the hospital and they come up to each other, they push forward, and then the other one pushes forward. That's exactly how Michael and I train together. It's just constantly pushing each other and trying to take it to the next level. And you just disregard the pain in that. The goal is always more important. The outcome is always more important than what you have to go through. And I think that's the way we always approached it. I'd
love to, as background for people listening, provide some context on how the two of you know each other. And those in the swimming world will know the history and the similarities in trajectory and so on. But either of you could take a stab at this. So I'll let, maybe Grant, if you want to go first, just to describe the backstory. How did you guys get to know each other?
It's really funny. I remember hearing Michael. There's a lot happening in our country right now because it's a 20-year anniversary since the Sydney Olympic Games. So there's plenty going on. And that was Michael's first Olympics. And I remember when he got fourth, I think, in the 200-meter fly there, and I was like a 15-year-old on the swim team. And our swim team, what was it, fifth?
Fifth,
Yeah.
come on, man.
It
Fourth,
was
I would have been a little happier.
That's close to fourth, though. So it's right next to it. So, and I remember just thinking, wow, what a freak. A 15-year-old's gotten fifth. I wonder if we'll ever hear of him again. So, and then the next year when he broke the 200-meter butterfly world record at the World Championships, was that 152? Am I right on that?
No, 154. I was 4'6", 4'6", 54.9 in spring.
So, and then I couldn't believe that a 16-year-old actually did that. And I got to, sort of know Michael from that moment moving forward. And then, then we got to train together. And I think I just saw eye to eye on Michael on things, like the approach towards swimming, the approach towards competition.
How did you end up training together? Just for those who might say, you both sound like you have strong New Jersey accents, but I suspect you're from different places. How did you end up training together?
Back in 2003, Michael and his coach, Bob, just came over to Australia for a coaching conference. And so he spent a few weeks in Australia. So we ended up training then. And I think at that point in time, we really got to know each other. And I saw Michael's level of application towards his training and all the new things that he was trying to bring to the sport, like the underwater off every single wall, which, for your listeners, Tim, not too many people know, but when you're in the middle of a race and you're at like the 200, 300, 400 meter mark, and then you try and push and go 15 meters off the wall, it is one of the most difficult things that a person can ever do. It's like a free diver, right, in the last little bit of holding their breath. Like, it is tough. And Michael started doing all these sorts of things that I thought, man, I wonder if that'll actually work. And so I saw just how creative and innovative in the sport that he was. And he was just a great guy. Like, he was just I just enjoyed hanging out. Like, we'd go out to dinner and do things together. And I think the basis of our friendship was kind of in 2003 kind of springboarded from there. And every time we saw each other at meets, because we'd obviously be traveling all the time, we just always connected and got along well. We had a lot of mutual respect for each other and what each other was bringing to the sport. And also there was another, sort of counterpart of mine, Ian Thorpe, who was through that era. And I think both Michael and I had a lot of respect for Ian. So, we'd all spend a lot of time together and respect what each other was doing for the sport at that time too.
And you mentioned, I'm going to do a follow-up here with you, Grant, and then I'm going to come back to you, Michael, to ask you what you first noticed about Grant. To you, Grant, when you mentioned innovation and new things being brought to the sport, what else did you notice? What were some other examples that you saw in Michael or through Michael?
Michael is the sort of guy that you never, ever want to say that he's not going to do something. You never want to be critical of Michael because he will stick it so far up you it's not funny. And not many competitors do that. If I actually said something about one of my competitors or tried to intimidate them a little bit, not even meaning to half the time, it would get under their skin. It could almost go into their performance in a negative way. Do that to Michael and improve his performance by about 400%. That was one very early on. Even when we play golf today, if I'm betting on him on the last hole, it's like this intensity of focus and athletic prowess and everything else you can imagine that makes you great just comes into play, even if he's had the worst 17 holes beforehand. So
I'll go from a 20 handicap to a 0 in no time, and on one hole just to stick it to him.
Yeah. And I keep testing it, right, because I'll start G'ing him up before that hole just to see if my theory about him is correct. And 100% of the time I'm proven right. So that's probably one of the other things about Michael. And that's an interesting characteristic that I haven't seen in many athletes across a lot of sports that are able to have that ability to increase performance to that extent because of maybe a slight bit of criticism or questioning. So that was one of the other things I really noticed about him very, very quickly.
I have some additional questions about that, but I'll hit snooze on those. Michael, what did you notice about Grant? What were some of your first impressions?
I don't know if you guys or the listeners can pick up, but I mean, as a kid growing up, like I was a massive swimming geek. I was a nerd. Like I was very into it. I was trying to learn anything I possibly could. But also, like I just respected, other great athletes, other great swimmers, and growing up, idolizing, some of the greats that walked before Hackett and I. I learned so much history. So being able to understand swimming from a global level very early on, through my sister in a way. And I just really connected with him. And as you heard with Thorpe as well, those two guys are probably the two closest swimming friends that I have to this day. I feel like I was closer with the Aussies than I was really with the Americans. And so it was kind of strange, but, like I do remember those 2003 days. Bob and I were going back to some of those old sets a few weeks ago, Hacky, and pretty good seeing some of those kicking sets, some of the pulling sets, the underwater stuff that we were doing with fins. I mean, just everything. And that's what I mean. Like, there aren't many athletes that can really take it to that level back-to-back days. And that was something that I saw in Hacky, and obviously I respected the hell out of. And the chance that we got to spend together was always very special, always very meaningful. And obviously he turned into more of a brother than anything else. And it's been cool to see. It's been, oh my gosh, unbelievable. So many great stories. I'm a scatterbrain, so I'm popping all over the place, and I feel like I'm going to take some of your questions away, so I'll stop.
Feel free to bounce around, scatterbrain. That I've made an entire career out of it on this podcast, so feel free. Grant, I want to ask you about intensity, and I'm going to do it in a somewhat sideways fashion, but both of you are known for being beasts in training and having just ungodly work capacities. And I don't know if I'm getting the hours right. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but 30 to 40 hours of training a week, maybe more at times. I want you to correct that in your answer if need be, but it seems like the combination of that volume plus the intensity that you're both famous for would drive anyone into the ground. And I'm just curious how you prevented that from happening. If maybe you could speak to that, Grant.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, around the 30 to 40 hours, that's right. We would train anywhere from some kind of 5 to 7 hours a day, 6 days a week. I know Michael would do 7 days a week. I think he trained like 530, 540 days straight into Beijing. So he knows all about that.
Okay.
Application. Yeah. What was that?
A little more than that, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It was 5 or 6 straight years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that degree of application is one thing, but you're right. You have to be doing it better, faster, harder than the guy on the other side of the world. And I think the goal, the outcome was just so strong, the desire. And I think when something is so meaningful and purposeful to you as an individual, you're willing to do anything. And it's funny, the body does get used to it to an extent. You get used to getting up at 4:45, doing that 8 kilometers, doing it to the intensity that you need to, then going into the gym for 90 minutes doing that, then going back in the afternoon and doing it all again. So, and it's amazing how much more you can absorb than what you give yourself credit for. But one of the things I always tried to do is whenever my coach would set something, like an insanely hard set, and if I finished it, I would do 1 or 2 more reps. And he was known as, having one of the top 3 intense programs in the world from a lot of the physiologists out there. So I always just try to take it to the next level every single time. I knew with my event, which probably is different to some of the finesse that Michael had in his events in terms of his underwater and skills, for me, it was about being tough. And he's trained with a great 1,500-meter swimmer called Eric Vance. So he knows the intensity and the mindset. And I was very similar to Eric in terms of, if you have to pull me out of the water after this session and put me in an ambulance, I do not care, as long as I get every ounce out of myself. And you've got to show up with that attitude every day, because that's how tough the guys are that you're racing. And it's just the way it is. And I think when you get the wins, it keeps you going, right? It keeps you going to the next step. It makes the bits a little bit more digestible. And I just loved that feeling. I just loved that feeling afterwards. And I knew when I rocked up to race day that if I'd done that work, that no one was ever going to touch me in my race.
And that's like the thing though, because it's like, like there are days obviously you don't want to go, Grant, right? Like every day wasn't perfect for us. So it's like, on those days you have to be able to find that 10, 20, 30, 50%, instead of 0, where you could just full on punt the whole day, the workout, skip, like be lazy, like do whatever the hell you wanted to. So it's like, to be as consistent as we both were, like throughout our career, literally every single session, every single stroke mattered. So, like that's like, it's for the listeners out there, like it was the smallest, finest details you could possibly think about. We had to think, or we had to go through and fine tune daily. I almost talk to it as like you're going to college, and the top level is the 10,000 level class, or the 1,000 level class, whatever the hell you want to call it. If you skip a few of those classes, like you're missing key steps that are going to help you at the very top level. When the lights are on, when, you might have had a bad night's sleep, or your roommate might be sick, or maybe the food in the dining hall wasn't very good, or your air conditioning doesn't work, So it's like all of the things that you're doing daily are prepping you for any kind of situation that you're going to face at the Olympics, at World Championships, whatever your big event is.
Totally. And I suppose that's something that wasn't in my mind when I asked the question. And that is, it's not just about developing more strength. It's not just about developing the brute attributes. It's also about the smallest technical details that you have to train to be second nature for competition. Just a quick thanks to one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. This episode is brought to you by Wealthfront. Did you know if you missed 10 of the best performing days after the 2008 crisis, you would have missed out on 50% of your returns? Don't miss out on the best days in the market. Stay invested in a long-term automated investment portfolio. Wealthfront pioneered the automated investing movement, sometimes referred to as robo-advising, and they currently oversee $20 billion of assets for their clients. Wealthfront can help you diversify your portfolio, minimize fees, and lower your taxes. It takes about 3 minutes to sign up, and then Wealthfront will build you a globally diversified portfolio of ETFs based on your risk appetite and manage it for you at an incredibly low cost. Wealthfront software constantly monitors your portfolio day in and day out, so you don't have to. They look for opportunities to rebalance and tax loss harvest to lower the amount of taxes you pay on your investment gains. Their newest service is called Autopilot, and it can monitor any checking account for excess cash to move into savings or an investment account. They've really thought of a ton. They've checked a lot of boxes. Smart investing should not feel like a roller coaster ride. Let the professionals do the work for you. Go to wealthfront.com/Tim and open a Wealthfront investment account today, and you'll get your first $5,000 managed for free for life. That's wealthfront.com/Tim. Wealthfront will automate your investments for the long term, and you can get started today at wealthfront.com/Tim. Are there any particular, Michael, tools or techniques for recovery that you found to really pull their weight, so to speak, and have an impact? Because as a mere 5'8" meat cube, I'm not really built for hydrodynamics. I think about training as you did for 5 to 6 years straight, and I just can't imagine a human body withstanding that without some portfolio of recovery techniques. Was there anything that stands out?
We had to be we had to be on top of everything, like trying to, like I was saying before, trying to do something that no one's ever done before, give yourself the chance. It's like you really have to approach it in every single different way possible than ever has been done before. So, there is no blueprint for it. So for us, it was, one step at a time. And for me to be able to swim at such a high level every single day, I had to be on top of whether it's nutrition, sleeping, drinking water. I treated my body like I was a Ferrari. I treated my body like I'm a high performance race car, because I'm asking it to do so many things. So, I was sleeping probably 8 to 10 hours a night with a 2-hour nap during the day. I was eating 8 to 10,000 calories a day. Ice tub, massages. I had one PT strength conditioning guy for 15 years that did all of my massages, all of my stretching, all of my Graston, all of my cupping. I had to be super, super anal about it, because I needed to ask my body to do so many things every single day. So I guess I'm kind of old school. I never really got into cryo or anything like that, but still to this day, I work out 6-7 days a week, and for me to be able to do everything I need to do, from playing golf, having enough energy with the kids, and doing everything I need to do personally, I have to recover. So I am stretching probably 45 minutes a day. I'm probably ice tubbing once, maybe twice a week. I go to acupuncturists, cupping twice a week. So, I think LeBron said something about it earlier in the year. He spends $1 million a year on recovery. And honestly, like that just makes sense to me, because if he's like from what I just said, he's asking his body to do so much at such a high level. It's like you have to treat it like it should be treated, right? You have to give it everything it needs. And that's the very basic stuff. So, I have all of my stats, like blood work, sleep numbers, lactate numbers, anything you can possibly imagine about health or recovery. I have it logged for the last 15 years, 20 years of my career. So I was extremely anal. Yeah, I was very anal about it because I needed to be. I was selfish in a way.
Yeah, that makes all the world of sense, and I think we're going to come back to that focus and the pros and cons of it. Grant, I'd love to ask you about anything you have found helpful for sleep, and that comes to mind because Michael, you just mentioned it. You also mentioned LeBron James, who's been on this podcast and has a number of different techniques, including using Calm app and other technological tools for helping with getting to sleep. Did you find anything in particular, aside from training many, many hours a day, which I'm sure helps, for sleep during your training or post competitive career?
Yeah, I always found, some of the apps are great. I actually used to put on one of these apps that used to just have the rainwater coming down and falling on the leaves and those sorts of just calming type of things. It's really funny. Today, the best way I find to fall asleep is just breathing exercises and just focusing away from everything that kind of matters in your life around work and the things that you're responsible for that normally keep you awake at night. But it's quite funny. To Michael's point, just around recovery. Sleep is obviously the ultimate thing to rest the body, and I track everything. I'm sitting here with, one watch on one hand, another one on the other hand, and I don't even know if either of them tell the time, but they're tracking my heart rate variability. They're tracking my sleep. They're tracking my recovery. And I check these stats like there's no tomorrow. Like I'm still a professional athlete. I think you're just hardwired to be like that. But and it depends what phase you're going through your career. There was points where I had injuries and my shoulders would be aching at night. So I'd be sitting there with bags of peas on my shoulders just to get the inflammation down. And, there's so many different sort of cycles throughout my career where, you'd have trouble sleeping. Sometimes I would feel the pressure too much coming into competitions after time for some reason. And those are the difficult times where, you need your recovery more than ever, but you're finding it hard to be able to get that rest. So, what's good for one person is not necessarily good for another. But what I know today is if I just did a lot more meditation, a lot more things of slowing down, a lot more mindfulness, those are the sorts of things that would have helped me a lot more throughout my career, because they're great techniques that I use today. And I probably sleep better today because of, just the foundation of knowledge that I've been able to build over the time, because we were just so anal and just so focused on recovery and trying to find ways to go, okay, the body is gone. How am I going to get it back to Michael's point? This is not a tractor. It's a Ferrari. And if a bolt's a little bit loose, this thing will not perform. So everything has got to be right. I used to, if I had to walk somewhere, I would sit down as soon as I got there, just so my hip flexors wouldn't tighten up, because I wasn't as good a kicker as what Michael was or Ian Thorpe. So I had to do everything on my legs. I was better on the upper body. I could do that. I could pull. It's called pulling. Just, you sort of tie your legs up and, swim with your arms only. That was my strength, but my lower wasn't. So I used to just be fixated on that every minute of the day to make sure whenever I rocked up to training and particularly competition, my legs were loose, my hip flexors had full range, and I was going to get the most out of them. So, it's an obsession, and that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah, I was spending some time, Grant, with one of our mutual friends who's deep in training right now, and we were hiking, and he said, "This is great. I just can't do too much hiking." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because I don't want my ankles to be overly stable or strengthened, because I need the flexibility. I want the looseness in the ankles." And I was like, "Wow, that's not something I hear every day."
It's the only sport where you want loose ankles. You look at tennis players; they've got all the support in place. We are doing the opposite. We'll have a panel of wood where you got a strap across the top, and you chuck your foot in there, and you're leaning back to try and create more flexion and angle. And that's the thing. Like Michael and Ian Thorpe are incredibly flexible and incredibly strong and incredibly mobile. And I didn't have that last part around the mobility that these guys have, because think about it, your feet are like flippers in the water. So if you get that extra bit of angle and you get that flick right at the end, it's going to propel you just that little bit more. And I'm sitting here at an Olympic Games where I got 2 silver medals. I think it's over the course of about 1,200 meters of racing, and they're by 0.2 of a second in total. So every little bit matters.
Michael, I want to revisit a name that has come up a lot so far in this conversation, and that is Ian Thorpe. And it ties into what Grant was saying about using critical or negative or doubting comments as rocket fuel for your motivation.
Yeah.
In the course of doing homework for this conversation, I came across a note on Wikipedia that said... So Ian Thorpe.
Which quote? He has 2 quotes.
Yeah, so
there are 2 of them that I remember. Go ahead. I'm interested to see which one you have.
So Wikipedia, feel free to correct any of this. It's not so much a direct quote. It just says Thorpe initially said that it would be highly unlikely for Phelps to win 8 gold medals at the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing. Phelps used the remarks as motivation and taped the words to his locker during the games. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to fact check that. Is that true?
100%, without question. Yeah.
What were the words that you put on your locker?
I think at that time, Bob and I were a major chunk of my career, I'd say we were big on, highlighting different quotes or times and, that people had done or things that we were trying to do. So, like for me, like every morning I got out of bed and I saw my goal sheet of the times I wanted to do that year or at the Olympics or whatever written down. So when I was getting out of bed, I was getting out of bed with a purpose. So then when I got to the pool, that's where that quote was. Just honestly, if I was kind of having an off day, I used that as Hackey said, a little extra fuel. That was something that if somebody did say it was impossible, I was going to shove that so far up that I was going to make them eat their words no matter what. Like that was there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And again, in 2016, I believe he said something along the lines of, it'll be impossible or almost impossible to see somebody over the age of 30 win an individual gold medal. And funny enough, I was giving him shit about it after the Olympics in 16. And he goes, I know how you work. He said, so I was helping you give that, get that extra fuel to really give you some extra motivation to really make sure you kick some ass. So, he to Grant's point though, like I knew Grant probably better than any other athlete in the world. I knew Thorpe better than any other athlete in the world. And the same way for them, like we knew about each other because we all were just trying to learn whatever we could and use it into our everyday lifestyle to help us accomplish the goals that we wanted.
Mm-hmm. And to Ian's credit or defense, I will read one of the actual quotes that is in Wikipedia, in which he says, quote, I'm really proud of him, not just because he won 8 golds, rather it's how much he has grown up and matured into a great human being. Never in my life have I been so happy to have been proved wrong. So ultimately was proved wrong. And as we're talking about this translation of using the negative or the critical into rocket fuel, like you said, Grant, it is, at least in my experience, which is very limited, but it's rare to see. The one other exception that I can think of, and maybe you guys will have seen this, is Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, where every episode there is an example of this, and someone will say something to him, and then they'll say, "Fuck, shouldn't have done that," and he comes back and breaks some universal record in the next quarter. And it was so remarkably consistent. And yet, when you flash forward and you are watching this current day footage of Michael, you can't help but get the feeling that he is still very angry, but he has lost a target at which he can direct this anger. And so I'm curious to hear from you, Michael, because I've lived in my life with a lot of anger. And have you found that to cut both ways? What has been your experience with anger during the competitive years or afterwards?
Naturally, Hackett can agree. I carry a lot of anger, and a lot of that I would say stems from my childhood and some of the things that I experienced. But I also think anger is really, really what did fuel me on those days where I just didn't want to swim. Those were the biggest things. It was almost like turning a switch on in a way. I'll say now, knowing what I know about depression, knowing what I know about anxiety, mental health, and about myself as well, I know that I can't approach my life or anything that I do in my life like I did in swimming, just because I guess I could say I was a professional or I was a doctor or whatever the hell you want to call me in the swimming world. But like I understood swimming, I'd like to think almost better than anybody, and definitely a feel for it. So, I don't have enough practice doing what I'm doing now in life. So, I do have to take steps back and take deep breaths. Or, I found that through COVID, my wife and I's communication level has gone up another level. So it's like little things like that. For me, I'm constantly learning more and more about myself and about why I am how I am. So yeah, do I still get angry? Of course, but I play a lot of golf. As I said, I work out 6 or 7 days a week. I lift weights 3 days a week. For anywhere 60 to 90 minutes. And then the other 4 days, I'm either swimming, I am riding a stationary bike, or I am on an elliptical. So, those are kind of outlets for me, but it does get scary at times. And, I will say Hackett has always been there for me through any single moment of my life, through those dark times, but I can also say, during this quarantine, it's been difficult for me. I've been very open about that recently and through all of this. And I can imagine that it's been difficult for more and more people. And I'll say the one thing, to the listeners out there who are listening to it, you're not alone. That's the one thing I truly, truly want to repeat. And you'll hear me say it a lot of times through this podcast, but you are definitely not alone with your thoughts, your emotions. But if you are afraid or you're scared or nervous, reach out to somebody for help, a trained therapist or a trained doctor. It's just a very uncertain time for everybody in the world. So that was a little rant. So go ahead.
No, I enjoy rants. That's why we have a long format. You mentioned dark times. I'd like to talk about this because I feel like both of you have been very open about this, which is a huge service. I mean, it is a huge public service to people who feel alone. And it's a huge public service to people who feel like they are uniquely flawed or are in a place of shame because the mental health and depression and so on can be very stigmatized still. Michael, could you speak to when you knew you needed help or when you hit rock bottom? Could you just tell the story of that moment or moments?
The first time I experienced depression, I'd say, was back in 2004, coming back after all that great success. And, obviously you expect it to continue, and, you get back and it's good for, a week or so. And then you kind of feel like you fall off the face of the earth. So for me, it was just beginning to open and talk about these things. Honestly, like I felt there was a weight lifted off my shoulders. These were things that I carried for, probably 20 years, 15 years. And when I really do get into those dark times, I basically isolate myself and give everybody the Heisman, because I almost feel like I am causing more stress to their life, or I'm a burden, or this, that, or the other. So like I go strictly internal, and almost like I pick at scabs, or like internal scabs that, really hurt. So like I almost try to inflict pain, but not literally inflict pain. So it gets bad, and when it does get bad, it really spirals. And I'll say one thing: Hackett was over here. Was that 2 years ago, Hackett?
Yeah, two years ago. Yeah, 2018.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the scariest ones that I've really experienced, and I feel like I'm alone. I feel like everybody's attacking me, and yeah, it's just it's an uncomfortable feeling. But I basically, I guess the easiest way for describing it would be like a turtle going back into its shell. I want more than anything to feel like I am a human being, because I feel like that's what I am. I feel like, yeah, I had a great talent, and I put my mind to something, and shit, I didn't give up. I went through ups and downs, and I was able to accomplish some pretty amazing goals. But at times, like, I feel like I'm almost a piece of meat and an object. And I think especially during those times when I start going there, when I'm in dark times and start going there, it's just downward spirals. So that's why I alluded earlier to talking about how much mine and my wife's communication has really just grown through quarantine, because I would say I had a similar incident, like I had in 2018, where it was very scary, and I know Nicole was doing everything she could to help, and we were almost forced to grow and to change as a couple because of the current situation and the situation at the time. It was difficult, but honestly, like, that's the coolest thing for me that I am so excited about with having depression or with having anxiety, because it honestly makes me who I am. And I understand it's never going to be fixable, and it's a part of me for the rest of my life. But you know what? I think it's something that I want to learn more about, and something I'm excited to wake up every day and have that chance to learn more about. So, like, that's why I'm so, I've spoken about my wife and I just communicating so much more. It's crazy to even think that was possible. But just going over leaps and bounds, just learning more and more about how we both work and things we need to be careful of so we don't trigger one another. It's been almost a blessing in disguise for us.
If I could just jump back to one thing that you said.
Whatever you need, please, always.
And if I'm misquoting, please correct me. But for those who aren't familiar, could you describe what made 2018 scary? What was the experience?
In 2018, I actually took a pair of golf shoes and I hit myself in the head with them. That was one of the very last times that I tried to inflict pain on myself. And I knew at that point, like, that was like that right there. I've never done something like that. I've never even thought about doing something like that. And the fact that I did, that right there was a message for me. It was a red flag. So, coming back to the house and I had a kind of a meltdown, but with talking to my wife, like, that was just a learning experience. Like for me, like, I basically am, a pot of water. Like, at the very last second, I'm ready to blow, and when I blow, it's pretty bad and it gets pretty ugly. I would say throughout my career, I'm great at compartmentalizing. I would say I could probably win a few more gold medals at that. But that's not something to be proud of. So, so I think, like, that's one thing that I've learned, to just to really talk about. I've learned more about my emotions. And if I have something I don't like, I talk about it, or I ask questions about it. So I think, with the experiences that I've gone through and the struggles that I've gone through, I feel like I have almost let my guard down in a way, if that kind of makes sense, like drop my shoulders, like taking a deep breath and just tried to relax, because I think throughout my whole entire life, I've been trying to shave hundredths of a second off my time. Right. And now for everyday life, I'm trying to slow it down. So it's crazy now for me to look at life. So the last 4 years have been interesting, but that in 2018, that to this day was one of the scariest times of my life. That and 2014 after my second DUI. We talked about sleeping earlier, and I have opened up more and more about this story just because it's a part of me. So basically throughout my entire life, I most of my swimming career, we were prescribed Ambien for traveling, for trips, to try to acclimate to times. And that night after my DUI, I was happy that I only had 2 Ambien left. That was a sleep aid that I had. And who knows what would have happened if I had more. I think those two moments for me are the two scariest moments of my life. And recently, I'd say within the last handful of weeks, like I've had a couple real scary breakdowns where, I almost really start shaking because I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to control anything. And that's about it.
Thank you for sharing, Michael.
But it's like honestly, for me, yes, it is. It's wild to think about. It's wild to talk about, but it's what makes me. And hell, if I can learn from just understanding why I am certain ways or why I react certain ways, then I feel like I'm setting myself up to be a better person. And at the end of the day, that's all I want. I want to learn more. You've heard us talk about stats, numbers. Like I want to know stats. I want to know numbers. I want to know why. I want to know why to every single question that you can possibly think about. So, I always know there's so many other options out there. And if I come to a dead end, I can reach out to one of those options or I can backtrack a few steps and take a different route. And so, I think really trying to simplify life and trying to slow things down for me is probably, those are the two things that I would say I focus on a daily basis. Yeah. Just to give myself a chance.
Yeah. And, Grant, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute because I want to sort of do a similar expedition into some of the dark chapters to hear your stories. Before we get to that, I am looking at just a paragraph from an ESPN article that includes you, Michael, and I want to read a small portion of it and ask a question. So here's the portion. It says, in treatment, Phelps earned the nickname Preacher Mike because each day began with a chapter of The Purpose-Driven Life, a book given to him by former Baltimore Ravens linebacker and good friend Ray Lewis. I don't know if you would still recommend this book or how you feel about it, but are there any books or resources that you have found particularly helpful in your journey in experiencing these things?
So I have a very close friend of mine who I feel very comfortable opening up to and asking a lot of questions about. I think you know who I'm talking about, Hackett. He passes me a bunch of different books, and some of the ones recently, I guess, like I was never somebody who liked to read books, and when Ray gave me that book, I wasn't spiritual in any way. Like I had, I wasn't religious, but I think through my journey, I 100% am spiritual without question. There is a power that is greater than me. I don't know what it is, but through my journey, I feel like I've learned so much from the books that I have received. The Purpose-Driven Life is one amazing one. The Power of Now is an amazing one. Ego is the Enemy is one that I go back to a lot. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is a great one. I loved It Takes What It Takes. I thought that was a great one. Just little books like that where I can, for me, whenever I'm listening, like I tend to do audibles and when I'm listening to it, I really just, it's what we're all supposed to do. But I love just taking little small pieces that are similar to things that I did in my career. Like for me to be as efficient as I was in swimming, I had to learn the absolute bottom line of every single stroke, right? Like I had to be as efficient as I could with my body that I was given. So it's like I've almost done that in ways. It's opened my mind into some really interesting new thoughts. It's given me, new journeys to travel down, roads to go down. But yeah, I mean, I would say I cycle through a lot of those depending on, as you heard before, the dark moods that I'm in. I went back to the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck just because I felt like I was just attacking myself too much. And I just needed to get a handle of a few things and do what I'm teaching my kids. Take a lion breath, take a deep breath every once in a while and relax. It's not about racing the clock in every single thing that you do in your life. So that's one big key thing for me is just trying to be as simple in every form of life as I possibly can. And it's honestly, it's looking at my kids, and that's the greatest example. We were talking about it earlier. My two oldest boys were playing with a metal trash can the other day. One of the trash cans where you step on it and the lid pops up. One of them is banging. One is banging on the top like it's a drum. The other one is stomping on the lid. And I was like, Boomer, what are you guys doing? And without missing a beat, he looks over and said, Dad, I've never seen one of these things before. And like I couldn't do anything but start laughing. So I was like, all right, yeah, whatever. Like, go ahead. Like, meanwhile, there's 100 different noises going on. And like I was going crazy, but I laughed out loud. Like I damn near fell on the ground laughing. I was like, that's what kids are. Like they are the best example of really living in the moment. And it's, you know, for me, I feel like having the time that I have around my kids during this quarantine, like I feel like I have a few things that I can kind of log into the memory bank and go back to when Boomer's pressing that red button that I hate to be pressed inside of me, and he's trying to get my nerves and go crazy on me. So, but kids are kids, and honestly, I've seen one of the coolest things is they want to be us so bad, and honestly, they just love us, and you know, it's you know, for me, I told you we'd get tears. For me, honestly, it's taken some of the dark times that I've been through. You know, just literally being crying and having your kids come up and give you a hug, you know, like those things, like that right there. You know, it's the greatest thing on the planet. So yeah, like it's just been, it's been a treat. And yeah, as a dad, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
Thank you, Michael. Grant, we're going to go back into the depths here a bit.
I was going to say, if you want to keep going, you can. It doesn't bother me. I just need a second to wipe the tears off, then I'm good.
I've already been through a whole heap of emotions just listening to that. Just going back to, you know, 2018 and that day when, you know, Michael was, you know, not Michael or was Michael, you know, just the other side of success, you know. So I just think, you know, it was tough to listen to that. I actually had water in my eyes just listening to it because it was, you know, seeing one of your best mates that you've known for so long and been through everything together, just go through that. It was brutal. It was really, really tough.
Sounds brutal. And what of your personal experience? What did the dark times look like for you? Or are there any particular instances that come to mind in terms of knowing when you needed help or hitting rock bottom?
The first thing I'll say at the outset, it's really funny. As an athlete, you were told from day one. I mean, I started swimming when I was 4 and being competitive when I was 5. Like, so everything throughout my childhood and throughout my sporting career was, hey, if there's an obstacle, go through it, overcome it, beat it. You're injured, you're sick, whatever. Just turn into a gladiator and just keep going forward. That is your job. So, and it was almost like adversity was your friend. And you used to, I call the expression now with mental health, it's like I got used to iron fisting my way through difficult periods in life. And that's not right. That's great as an athlete. That's a great attribute to have, to push through pain and overcome those challenges to get the outcome. But in life, that actually doesn't work. And I found that out the hard way. And I realized how real mental health was. So I think, you know, for me, I remember I've, you know, been through the ups and downs, and I really never recognized that about myself because I just kind of thought, okay, just put your boots back on and keep going. But, you know, a few years ago when, you know, I went through a really public divorce here in Australia, and everything that followed from that, and innuendo and speculation and you know, people questioning your value set, just undid me. And I just didn't realize how much it undid me and how much it took me down. And, you know, it got to a point where, you know, in early 2017, you know, just kind of one more thing where I was sitting in a hotel room, completely isolated, 2 security guards on that floor. So no one would come near my room, you know, sitting on the front page of the newspaper and the news, just what's going on with me. And then I think the 4 days that I had there, and I was texting Michael at the time, I literally had over 1,000 messages in my phone, on WhatsApp, on my email, and on my SMS within about a 3-hour time frame. And I think I got back to 3 people, and Michael was one of them, and Alison Schmidt, who you know, lived with Michael too, were the only people that I got back to. And I think I used words like, "Oh, I'm just scared." And everyone thinks you're invincible for what you've done. But, you know, like everybody else, you just have those vulnerabilities. And when it's so public, it just exaggerates the situation and amplifies it and creates another layer of complexity that you have to deal with. And I just made a commitment to myself, I think, at the end of that that I'm never going to allow myself to get to this spot again. Like anytime that I feel like, you're getting pushed to that edge or things are going wrong, I'm just going to adopt the strategies that I now know instead of denial. Because I would always put myself in denial. I wouldn't let myself be vulnerable. And even my fiance, Charlene, now, like if I start talking about the way I'm feeling in isolation or going through a stressful period, and she goes, she is so proud of me. She goes, I just love it when you're vulnerable. And I said, I feel like a bit of a pussy, to be honest, but yeah, cool. And so it's like, and then I'm like, wow, I feel better afterwards, that open and honest transparency, and my relationship is better as well. So it's like, wow, doing this vulnerability thing, which was the number one thing that I found I had to tap into going through those stages in life and phases, whenever they embark upon you. And they come across at the weirdest times too. Like even when things are great and going well, sometimes it can be a low point after that you have to deal with that. So yeah, I mean, I made that decision back in 2017. I basically lived with Michael most of that year. And he was my biggest supporter. And when I went and did therapy and got some help, he was a guy who drove me there and dropped me off, and we had talks till 2-3 a.m. sometimes later in the morning, and he'd come in and wake me up in the morning with the dogs and Boomer crawling on the bed all over me, which I really appreciated. But it's those sorts of times where we'll just always be there for each other. But people see us as these people who've achieved great things and won multiple Olympic gold medals and world records and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you don't, fall into the same fate as everybody else when it comes to mental health or just being a human. And I had to learn those things definitely the hard way.
You were mentioning the vulnerability with your significant other. I was just having a conversation last week with a coach who you could really consider on some level a therapist. And he said to me, candor is the ultimate aphrodisiac. And it seems to have a lot of benefits, not just singular benefits. And you mentioned strategies. I'd love to hear what other rules or strategies you have found or developed for yourself, so that when you sense yourself edging towards the brink, you are better able to reel yourself away from it.
I think just doing everything proactively. I exercise like Michael, 6 days a week. I try and make myself have a recovery day, which is hard when you've got personalities like ours. We know the importance of recovery, but we just like to keep going and going and going. So that's one thing. The other thing that I do, it's funny, I went to stop, sort of drinking for a year. And then I got to a year and I was kind of like, you know what? I don't even feel like drinking anymore. It kind of, and it's not like I was ever a person who drank every day by any means. It would be far and few between, but I could go hard if we were, having a night with the boys or something like that, or use it to escape. So, I stopped drinking. So full stop. Like I got to a year and I was like, you know what? I don't even feel like that anymore. It's not something in my life that I value or I like, or it brings value to me. So I don't do that. I also make sure that I get enough sleep. That's really important for me. I eat very healthy. Diet has been a big part, and just that whole sort of health regime that I have to follow just to make sure that I'm in a good space. So, and the one thing that I still find difficult that I do, and we just touched on it, is I talk about it. I talk about where I'm at, how I'm feeling, why I'm feeling like that, instead of bottling it up. Michael and I, we're the kings of compartmentalizing things and actually just locking them away. I'll deal with that box when I need to deal with that box, but unfortunately that box is growing and being fueled. And when it goes, it explodes, and it's not good. It's not good at all. And Michael and I know this best. So I try and jump into that box and I try and work through it, try and get it out. And so I think for me, it's all that sort of proactive stuff that I'm doing, that, and I feel more settled in my life now than I ever have. And you know what? And I know this with Nicole, because I know, Michael's wife extremely well, and the wonderful human being that she is. Just how good she is for Michael in that situation, and how much she cares and loves him. Like, it's actually beautiful to watch. It makes me, because I've been through this stuff with her, and we've spoken about how we're there for Michael. And, Charlene's the same for me. Like, I just, that partnership of someone who gets you, like she gets me. she gets my drive and ambition, and yet that other mental, sort of fault, that whatever you want to call it, vulnerability, those things that are imperfect. She gets that, and she likes it and works with me on it. So I think I haven't necessarily had the right partnerships in life as well. So I think, Tim, that's a really important part of who you're surrounding yourself by. But that significant other can make and break in many respects too, because they've got to connect with a unique personality, which I know Michael and I certainly share uniqueness like that. So, they're kind of the things that really matter. And look, it's been a journey to get to know all those things, because I've made so many mistakes along the way, but I just know what makes me feel like more of me now, and feels like a purpose, and the things that, help support and maintain that.
Grant, do you see someone like a therapist on a regular basis, or are they used only in cases of emergency or beginning to redline?
I do, if I've gone through, a hard sort of period. I won't say on a consistent sort of week to week, month to month basis. But if I am going through a stressful period, I've definitely got that support network there, and I'll jump online, have a talk, get it out. Because sometimes it's, and I've learned this too. I didn't really use a sports psychologist too much when I was swimming, because I always thought, I was invincible. So, and that was a weakness if I had to tap into that. Little did I know that would have really helped me, and I might have had a better trophy cabinet than what I've got if I recognized that at the time. But now, sometimes family members, I know I spoke about significant other then, but I know family members sometimes aren't necessarily the ones you should be tapping into, because the emotion is just too close. So having someone who's a little bit more objective, has the skill set, has the understanding, someone you can have a different type of conversation with, is really important. So definitely got that network in there. Tap into it when, the flags kind of come up.
What are the flags? Like, when do you know it's time to take yourself in for a 60,000 mile checkup with a professional? What are some of the signs that you notice?
I mean, we spoke about anger before. Michael, was talking about that and the way he's able to channel it. And look, there's a negative connotation with anger, because it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes anger can push you to get more out of yourself, to deliver an outcome that is amazing. So, but sometimes it can, when you're edgy, you're irritable, you're not sleeping well, things just aren't escaping the mind. I think all those kind of, little red flags that sort of start to add up and compound, and you're just not removing that stress, that weight. They're kind of the things that you start to recognize and go, hey, I'm going through a bit of, this is not just a one-off right now. This is not a two-off. This has kind of been a little bit more sustained than what I would like. And I think I have a much greater ability to check in with that now than what I've ever had, where before it would be like that little box that I said it goes into, or let's just stuff it back in there with the others. And I don't let that happen anymore. So, yeah, it's mood more than anything else. And if it's a sustained poor mood, then that's the thing that I go, okay, we've got to do something about this. Or, I in a situation where I've got twins from a previous marriage, and I miss them like crazy when they're not here. And the impact that had on me for so many years that I failed to even really talk about has been a big thing that I just highlight now. And I'll just go to Charlene, I'm just like, I'm really, missing Jagger or Charlize, or, and I'll just start to talk about it. And then all of a sudden, you kind of get on the other side of that. So they're kind of the things that I recognize now that aren't as big a blind spots as they were previously.
And when you talk to a professional, if you do, what does the format look like? Is it more about really just getting it off your chest and talking to someone, or is there a particular type of guidance or a format that is helpful to you?
I have a guy who I tap into, and he's almost got a comical element to his style, which I really connect to. So I love that, because he's extremely intelligent, very, very bright. And look, I'll write down the things that I'm feeling and that I feel like I've got to really check in with and get through and ask questions about. So I'll do that. So that's a structure I come in with. He'll then just pull out stuff on all of that just makes it, takes the emotion out of it almost. It almost goes, it's more pragmatic. He goes, this is why that would happen. This is why you feel like that. You know what? You're kind of catastrophizing that. That's not as big as you seem. Like, and then he'll make, comparisons and perspectives around other people or other situations, and it kind of gives you a different view. And it's like he just comes in and provides these additional lenses that I didn't have, that he's just given me. And I kind of cover off all the topics like that. And we have a laugh through it all too, once you kind of get on the other side of each of those areas. And so I find that style has really worked with me. It's a good question, Tim. No one's ever actually asked me that before.
Well, if I can get one novel question in, I'll be quite pleased with myself. You guys have been interviewed 500 million times, so I'm glad to give myself a pat on my bald head for that one. I'll follow it up because you mentioned something that I find very interesting, and that is sending something in written form to this therapist beforehand. Is it a stream of consciousness? I'm feeling this because of this, and that is it just like one gigantic paragraph or page, or is it something else? That just seems like such a time saver to provide that context to someone in advance so they can actually put some thought into how they might respond to you.
I think you probably got the sense through the chat. Michael and I, we're very analytical. We think through everything and every situation and every outcome. That's the reason we know, every time with respect to our events and, the timeline and history of our sport so well. And I think if I'm going to approach something, I might as well do it properly and get the absolute most I can out of it. So it's just dot points and specific areas, like things that have been on my mind, situation.
Dot points or bullet points, I guess.
In Aussie term, yes. So
yeah, that's right.
I can decipher all of that stuff for you.
Thank you.
I got you. I'm fluent.
Funny.
It's good.
When I go over and stay with Michael, we'll go out and I'll say something and he'll repeat it for me. And I was like, yeah, what he said, because everyone sort of looks at me like I've got two heads. But Michael is the ultimate at deciphering Aussie slang. He knows it all. So bullet points is exactly what I jot down.
Dot points.
Yeah, dot points. Yeah. So and so for me that works. They kind of just cover the areas, the topics that have been on my mind, or the situation. Normally it's more of a situation for me. Day to day, I'm pretty good. It's more if I've come across something that's a sustained stress or I can't work through myself. And look, to be honest, that seems to be happening a little bit less in my life. But in saying that, I know it could intensify at any point in time, and I recognize that you've got to always stay on top of those things. And it's been great for the work that I do now and the life that I have and the dad that I am. I think I've just improved across so many different areas. And it's probably where I refer back to sport. I'm like, damn, I wish I used that sports psychologist a lot more and tapped into that. I didn't even recognize vulnerability for a split second throughout basically my entire career. And I feel like that was a bit of a disaster now. And it actually probably would have set me up better for post-sport career as well.
Well, it seems like a lot of superpowers have on the other side of the coin super weaknesses almost by definition, right? Because if you have a hyper focus on anything in life, by definition, you have to neglect other things. You only have so much attention to slice and dice, right? And if you're using compartmentalization as one of the tools for optimizing as a competitor, which every competitor I've interviewed on this podcast seems to be very good at, then there's sort of a price associated with that when it's applied more broadly speaking. Michael, do you meet with therapists or professionals on a regular basis?
I'm online all the time. I mean, with everything, with traveling as much as I do, I spend a lot of time on Talkspace. I've worked with Talkspace for a few years now, and honestly, for as much time as we're on our smartphones, it's just kind of a no-brainer. But also besides that, like the Hackey's point, I'll be the first one to admit I still compartmentalize a little bit, but I'll say I don't think I would make the podium anymore if I was competing in it. So I think I've definitely improved. But my big thing is just I pile things up sometimes, and like I can't agree with what Hackey said. And what you were saying as well, Tim, like when we did that in our career, like I was almost selfish in a way where everything I was doing in my life was based around swimming. Every single decision I made. And now with the family, it's not that way. My life is different. So I have to take a step back and almost reassess everything. And that's what I was saying, like, really simplifying everything to the smallest form, because that's what Grant and I, did during our career. And honestly, like I was sitting here taking, notes, listening to, kind of what Grant does when he's, kind of feels himself spinning. I literally was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I had to do if I wanted to learn underwater dolphin kick, or, like I had to break it down to the simplest form. So, that's really what I have to do more, and give myself, a little bit more credit from time to time where I'm as hard on myself as I am.
You are the toughest person on yourself that I know.
Oh, it's brutal, bro. I'm sitting here looking at, I can't even, some of these names that I have on my desk, I'm not going to repeat, but Hacky, I also, to Hacky's point, I love writing stuff down to see, especially with dates, because times for me are so important. So if I know I'm going through a dark phase, what was I writing? Why was I thinking these things? So, here, I've felt alone, or I've felt dark lately. So those are things that I have written on my calendar. So if I sit down, I see that and I'm like, well, why was I feeling dark? I have so much to be, happy for. I have so much to be proud of. There's so many amazing things going on in this world with me, with my life, with everything. Why am I dark? Why am I afraid? Why do I feel worthless almost? So, I feel like writing stuff down really helps. And, that's why, for listeners out there in particular, if you guys find ways to simplify things, because we live in a crazy fast moving world where, there's always things trying to get our attention. So if we can simplify things and focus on what's important to us, I think it makes our life easier, right? There's less stress to worry about. So, and you hear Hacky talk, communicating. Shit, I made the joke that I learned how to communicate at the age of 30. Yeah, it's. I can laugh about it because I was really good at compartmentalizing, but that's not good. So that's why I talk so much about this quarantine and how much it's forced us to become vulnerable in a way, because there's so much unknown. So it's if we want to give ourselves a chance, then we have to do something different. So, if it's opening up and talking about something that is scary, try it, because I'll say all this stuff that I've talked about, throughout that happened throughout my career. Should I carry that thing all that stuff along for 10 years? So, having that out and open, one makes it so much easier to talk about, but two, there's so much less weight on my shoulders. I feel normal, talking about this stuff that I know there are so many other people that go through the same thing or in similar different ways. I don't know. I feel so much better. My shoulders drop, and that's just something that I will always say and try to push.
Well, there's a weight to secrets or keeping things inside, or there can be. And sure. It makes me also want to mention that there is a new documentary, HBO documentary out called The Weight of Gold, in which you're featured very heavily. Why be part of that? And I think we've probably mentioned a lot of the reasons why, but and maybe a better question, because that's kind of a lazy question and I should know better. Better question is, how does it feel having done that? And maybe you could describe. It feels, yeah. Please say more. And just for those who don't have any context, The Weight of Gold is an HBO sports documentary, very, very well shot, exploring the mental health challenges that Olympic athletes often face. Just wanted to provide that since I didn't explain it. But could you expand, say more about
Sure.
what it felt like to do that?
As you've heard, or as people have seen or read, I've struggled, throughout my whole career. So, in 2016, where I was probably, more aware of just life in general and everything that was going on more than I ever have in my life. So, at that point, I saw that there were other athletes that were going through similar things like I was, going through opening ceremonies and seeing athletes, almost body language. I feel like that's something that I've learned to read really well over throughout my life. But I started reading people, but I also started hearing things that people were saying, seeing things that people were posting or this or that. And I was like, literally I said, oh shit, this is a lot bigger than I thought, because I always knew it was, mental health in general was something that was very big. But I almost I felt like it smacked me in the face at the 2016 Olympics and losing way too many of our family members in the Olympic world over the last 5 years. Like I want to cry every time I think about it. So, for me,
by losing, you mean to suicide?
Committing suicide, yes. So for me to be able to do this documentary with the athletes that we had who were so vulnerable, I can't thank them enough for opening up and being them, being their authentic self and filling, I guess, sharing some stories about what we experience and what we go through. But as we stated earlier, this is something, there's a massive stigma around mental health, and this is something that a journey that I've started on, and I'm breaking the wall down as fast as I can. And the more that people stand up and talk about their stories and their struggles, we're going to break it down piece by piece. And doing this documentary, I feel, is an awesome first step. And just kind of a raw look at some of the things that go through our heads and that we experience. And we're not this statue, we are a human being. And it was something, like I said, I can't say enough. I'm super proud of it. It just shows I was a kid in a candy store working on it. This is something it's like my baby. So, I've I guess really since I opened up in 2014 about my struggles with depression and anxiety, I really kind of took it by the horns, so to say. And this is my mission. Like, I'm going to do everything I can, one, to learn as much as I can about mental health, but also, try to help as many people as I can, break this wall down. The suicide number is continuing to climb, and it frustrates the hell out of me. I mean, I read a story last night going to bed of two brothers that are on a show over in London. And honestly, my heart hurts because I feel some of the pain that they go through. And I mean, I think the biggest thing, I want people to know that there is help on the other side. I've been, and I've seen a lot of really dark places throughout my life, but I also know that I'm not alone. So when I look at that word on my desk, like that I wrote down, like, I am not alone, but that's part of my darkness. And I think just always knowing that there is somebody out there, that's what we all have to realize. No matter what we're going through, somebody is there to hold your hand, to give you a hug, to, whatever it is that you need, because we are not alone in life. And honestly, we can't do anything in life by ourselves. Like, it's really hard if you think about it, and if we can include other people that love us and want to be around us, then it makes life 10 times better. That was one thing that I had to learn the hard way with compartmentalizing throughout my career is I couldn't do it by myself. It was impossible. I couldn't handle the stress of the emotions and the feelings, all that stuff that was building up inside of me while I'm trying to perform at the absolute best. Like, it's impossible. It's unhealthy. So, I think that's the biggest thing, really being able to do it and put it together. And, I was honestly frustrated with how long. I mean, I'm somebody that wants stuff done fast. So, I never realized how long the process, I know, yeah, right? So I never really realized how long the process of making a piece like that takes. And to be honest, I'm extremely thankful that it came out and we were able to launch it during COVID, because it's the single, that was the one thing that I was deathly afraid of when everything started happening, was the impact on everyone's mental health that this was going to take. And we've seen suicide numbers increase. So, I can't stress enough how important it is to, you have something going on inside of you that's not normal. Say something to somebody, write it down, something. Don't hold on to it. I think life is definitely too damn short. And, as I said earlier, I want to slow down time as much as I can and be able to enjoy everything that life has to offer.
Totally. And one way of slowing down time is sharing time with others.
Correct.
And
yeah.
it strikes me that, of course, on one level, I respect both of you tremendously as just icons of competition, as champions of achievement. But what impresses me even more than that is the model of male friendship and brotherhood and mutual support that you guys have demonstrated, certainly privately, but also publicly. And I'm just so happy to have both of you on this call, because that seems so foundational to your success as not athletes necessarily, although that could be part of it, but as humans, as having that deep bond and mutual support. And like you said, Michael, even if you are out there and feel alone, which is very easy during COVID, and it's easy all the time in modern industrialized cultures because we are very much compartmentalized physically and separated from a lot of interaction and cohabitation and so on. There are tools like Talkspace. There are professionals who are available, and just reaching out to someone can release so much pressure in the system. And there are options. So I feel like The Weight of Gold, as a doc coming out now, is great timing during very bad times for millions of people. So I couldn't agree more. And Grant, I realized I did not come back and ask you one of the questions that I'd asked Michael, which was related to books or resources that you've found helpful. My audience is always interested in books, certainly any resources or tools, but are there any books that come to mind for you that were either particularly helpful with respect to challenging times, or books overall that you've recommended or gifted the most to other people?
Oh, I think I gave the set a lot to Michael, so that was one gift.
Which was that?
The subtle art of not giving a fuck. So,
yes, yeah, Mark Manson.
Yeah. So that one, I just reread that probably a couple of months ago. That book always just takes me back one or two steps and renews my perspective on situations, because I'm a hyper focused individual. When I get onto goals and tasks and things that I want to deliver, like I sometimes get the blinkers on in such an intense way that I can lose perspective on things around me. So I'm really a lot more aware and conscious of that now, and I make sure I've got things like that. His follow-up book was great. I really enjoyed that. I actually read that and bought it for a mutual friend of ours, Tim Matt Target, over for his birthday last year in December. So, So I enjoy his reading. I read a lot of journals. I even read a lot of Harvard Business Review articles. There's one I like in particular, and it's really funny. This will sound a little bit counterintuitive around mental health, but it's about mental toughness. And there's, they've got the sort of mini books that you can read, all the journals that they've had around that particular subject matter. And I love that because it resonates with me, 100%. So I find I actually need to not just read things that give me renewed perspective, but actually things that make me feel more like me. And that's one of the things that the psychologists that I've dealt with, because, we always talk about purpose and meaning and all this sort of stuff. And he had this really interesting thing that he said to me, because, people have this high expectation of you once you've achieved certain things in life, and you have a greater expectation of yourself more than anybody else. And he just said to me, he goes, just do more things that make you feel like you. And that has always stuck with me, because it's like, okay, what do I value? what do I truly value? And it's funny, that upon the basis of that saying or that statement, I really got back to my own core values, and then I did things that sort of checked into those values. And it's funny because I always had people tell me, "Oh, Grant, just slow down, just enjoy it, just relax, don't try and do everything to the top level every single time."
I hate when people say that shit. God, it pisses me off so much.
I tried that, and you know what? I realized that's not me. Like, doing things mediocre is not me. I can't stand that. And it was funny, all the things that disconnected with my value set destabilized me. And so I focus on reading things, reading journals, doing things that connect more with me. And those things like mental toughness, reading about Navy SEALs, reading about different training strategies, that sort of stuff I really love. And I find that an escape for my personality. So that's quite interesting. And then I love commerce and love business. So I read a lot of different business books and articles. So they're kind of the things that I just enjoy. So yeah, it's always just reconnecting with purpose for me that actually slows my mind down, gives me perspective. And then, the books that I just referred to certainly have helped me round out that view even more so.
Do you have any favorite, since you mentioned it, I know this might seem off topic, but it's not, since this is about your lives and not just one facet. Any particular favorite business books? And I'll just mention for folks also, Harvard Business Review has a book, which is HBR's 10 must-reads on mental toughness, and features Martin Seligman, Tony Schwartz, Warren Bennis, and others. And that's $24 or $25. You can find that online, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Are there any business books that are real standouts for you?
There's one I'm reading at the moment that I'm really enjoying, which is Phil Knight, Shoe Dog.
I've got to read this book. I've got to read it. It's been recommended to me 100 times.
Yeah. So I'm in the middle of that. And I've got to say that's definitely one that springs to mind. That's definitely top of the list. Other ones that stand out, I mean, probably that one for now. The other ones that I enjoy reading, I enjoy just general sort of leadership. So I read a lot of stuff that relates to that in business, and knowing and understanding what the fundamentals are. I've probably got, if I walked into my bedroom, 7 or 8 books that I want to read that I haven't at the moment. I always enjoy reading things around Warren Buffett. I've read a lot of books that relate to him, just on his mindset and his approach towards things. Because the one thing that I've really found in high performance, you don't actually have to read always on your specific subject matter, and when it comes to business, I always find I read articles, mostly like strategy articles, or growth initiatives, or what was the change in Boeing when Airbus said, okay, we're going to do the A380, but you know what, if we get this wrong, it's actually going to send us bankrupt. What was the inflection point where business became great? And I enjoy Jim Collins, like his books Good to Great are really interesting just to learn about. I find any sort of success story is the same. It is just a daily grind of mundane things that you just have to keep getting right and improve by 0.1%, and then do it again the next day, then do it again the next day. Then eventually, momentum and the flywheel, as it's referred to in that book, kind of click into place. And then all of a sudden, many years later, you've got this outstanding result that people think is an overnight success that took you 15 years to get there. So that's the way I find most things work. And so I love reading around the principles of, high performance and success in any single field, whether it's a Navy SEAL, whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's, in music, the School of Juilliard, like whatever it might be, those principles are the same. And I'm always trying to identify those, because I got to be honest, I love it. Like, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about learning about it, talking about it, reading about it. So, yeah, they're probably always the things that I try and tap into. And again, it comes back to that saying that I said before: just do things that make you feel more like you. That's not everyone's cup of tea. Winning Olympic gold medals is not everybody's cup of tea, because the sacrifice you have to make for that, for most people, is probably not often worth it. But for the two guys you've got on this call, we'll do anything to get those things, and sort of have the same approach to everything else that I try and achieve or want to achieve.
I love that expression, doing more things that make you feel like you. I've never heard anything, or never heard the message worded quite that way, but it's very succinct and very deep if you spend some time on it. So thank you for sharing that. Michael, are there any other books or resources that you would like to mention, just to give you another dip at the well?
I was sitting here looking at the little bookshelf that we have behind. We have a scatter in here, but I was sitting here looking at these books, and there's 2 of them that popped into my head. That one I've gone back to. So for trying to slow things down, I tried to mix in more of a daily reading. So Mark Nepo has a good one, The Book of Awakening. And then the Daily Stoic. I mean, I feel like some of those things, you can really just almost just take a step back, right? Take a deep breath, let it, read a quote, read, a single page, whatever it is, let it marinate. And just for me, it's just something that's so easy to do, but something that's so awesome to do to start your day. I just feel like it just gives you some kind of purpose of what you're doing. And when life is too fast, again, it gives you that second to take that step back.
Yeah. Daily Stoic and Ego is the Enemy. You got a whole lot of Ryan Holiday on your bookshelf.
It's funny because I just got the Daily Stoic from my coach, or my old coach, sorry, Bob Bowman, and I've gotten a few of the other books, as I was saying earlier, from Seth Hackett, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's one of like my favorite human beings on this planet to have a communication or a conversation with, excuse me. But some of the books that he's given me really have like I feel like he has a really good understanding about me as a person and how I work, and he's a very, very smart human being. So I feel like some of the things that he's given me to read are again, back to my point, just simple ways for me to understand something that I might be too hard on myself with, or I might be too hyper focused on one thing, right? So almost giving me that bigger picture, trying to be that lake instead of being that glass of water. So yeah, I think like a lot of the books that I have that I'll rifle through time and time again, I think have been super helpful just to, yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, just give me a chance. Like I feel, for me, like a lot of my life was focused on swimming, and that really was it. Like, as Hacky knows, being an Olympian, your whole life is focused on one thing. Nothing else matters in life but that. I'm honestly really learning how to live on dry land, so to say. I kind of made the joke throughout the last few years that I feel like I've taken more strokes in the swimming pool than I've taken steps on land. So it makes it challenging when you have a freight train trying to come down the middle of the street with no tracks on it. So it's been difficult at times, slowing me down, but I feel like some of those simple, kind of different approaches to looking at things, for me, just have benefited so much, just because I can't expect to fill up everybody's cups if my cup isn't filled up, right? Like I have 3 boys and an amazing wife and a household here that I'm in charge of my roles, right? So if I'm not taking care of myself and filling my glass up by taking the time that I need for me, I have no shot in being able to be a good husband, a good friend, a good dad. So, I just want to have a chance. And I feel like that's what I did in my career. My preparation, it was the process. Like it was the whole process of it all that I learned. But, the preparation was, so key. So it's just trying to slow things down. I don't know. If any of that makes sense, but yeah, it's something that
it does.
It's been enjoyable, but as you can imagine, something that's been extremely challenging at times. As you hear Grant and I talk about, we want to go fast, and we want to get to point A to point B as fast as we can, the fastest way, but also the most effective way. So how can we do it? What can we do? You know what I mean? So it's like
Ricky
we get our minds going. Yeah,
it's totally. Sometimes you want to be the lake, and other times you want to take a jet ski at 100 miles an hour across the lake. And some days it's hard to decide which one you want to do.
Right. Right.
Oh man. Well, this has been such a fun conversation for me. And I just have one more question, and it's sometimes a difficult question. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I'll give it a shot. And that is, actually, before I get there, I have to say I've also found Stoicism very, very helpful, and it's such a small world because I actually published the audiobook versions of both Ego is the Enemy and The Daily Stoic, believe it or not.
Yeah. I listen to your voice a lot. I've heard it a lot. I think you've done some stuff with Trevor Moawad as well, I believe.
I may have. Yeah, it's
I might be wrong. So sorry.
It's just such a small world. So let me ask a question that sometimes doesn't work, because it is sometimes a hard question. I'll ask it of both of you, and the question is this: if you could put anything on a billboard, this is metaphorically speaking, right? It could be an image, a quote, a question, a word, anything non-commercial on a billboard to get something in front of billions of people, what would it be? And if either of you want to take a stab at it, feel free to jump.
I can go if you want, Hacky.
Yeah,
if you want to go ahead.
In my head, but you go first, bud.
I mean, I would just say it's okay to not be okay. I think that's something that for me, even in my darkest, scariest moments, like that's the one thing that Nicole always says to me. And she'll throw her arms around me or ask if she can give me a hug sometimes. If I am just like, if I really want to be alone, like that's the one thing, like she'll ask me, because sometimes I just need that moment by myself. She'll ask to give me a hug. My wife will ask me to give me a hug. So, like it's we've just been able to, I mean, again, I can't say it enough, grow so much. So, I would say again to everybody out there, like, it's okay to not be okay. And you're not alone. Like those two things I think can just go together. With everything we've talked about on this call, it's just, it's in a difficult time. It's something to just simplify it. Take a step back, and take a deep breath and relax.
Those are great. Grant, any thoughts?
Yeah, the first thing that popped into my head, and I often think that's always the right and best answer, was if you want to put something on a billboard, I just be you. Be you.
Be you.
It's 2 words, very simple, because the more you do the things that make you feel like yourself, it brings out your personality, it brings out who you are, makes you feel good about yourself, and you don't have to be something that's false or superficial or create an image for anybody else or anything else. And I think once you get back to that simplification, and to Michael's point, I think often you feel best about yourself. Often you find the things that you enjoy doing more often. Often enough, you're living a life that just makes you feel good about yourself, and connect better with the people around you. So I think just be you and feel comfortable in that.
Excellent.
It's so good, man. Like, I honestly, that's like, I can just hearing you say that through the last hour that you've mentioned it to me, like, it's brought up so many things that would help me just like simplify life, and it just totally makes sense. Like, there are times like I can say, like, I play golf with, or I've had the chance to play golf with a lot of professional golfers, and I recently got to play with, I got to know John Rahm a little bit. So the first time playing with him, I'm like, shit, like, I want to try to play as good as I can. Like, I want to be on my, A game, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, well, that's not me, because I don't have the time and the preparation to perform how I expect to perform. So I can't expect to be somebody else. I have to be me. That's something that I struggled a lot with, and at times still do, with that, like, where I feel like sometimes I am just a swimmer, and because I feel like that's what the story has been, right? Every single headline is about swimming, and finally now, like that, like, that's why I'm so happy with everything we're doing with mental health. But like, that's one thing that I really just saw myself as, and not a human being. So I want to say thank you, because that quote right there, just be you, I think can simplify 1,000 things for me. I don't know how I've never heard you even say that, but thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up today.
I had a brain fart like you before, and it just popped into my head. I just went with it.
Well, this has been really fun to have both of you on, and for everybody listening, we'll link to everything in the show notes as usual at tim.blog/podcast, so you won't miss anything. The documentary that was mentioned is The Weight of Gold. That is an HBO documentary. Grant, people can find you on Instagram at Grant__ Hackett, HACKETT, 2 underscores. And then Michael, people can find you on Twitter at Michael Phelps, Facebook, Michael Phelps, Instagram at M_Phelps00. Is there anything else that you gentlemen would like to mention? Anything else that you'd like to add as a closing comment or anything at all?
I got to say, I'm so proud of Michael as a friend. He knows I love him like a brother, and but people have seen him as a product, right? Because the guy's so successful and so amazing, and achieved things that no one else ever has in the history of sport. And but to hear how open and honest and transparent and forthright he is around mental health, because I know he wants to help other people, to me is just an outstanding characteristic. And you could never underestimate the strength, but Michael always has that strength to do that sort of stuff. So yeah, man, it was awesome to hear you today. It was emotional for me sitting on the other side, because I've been there. I've been right there with you, sitting in the closet, talking.
Launching my phone, right?
Yeah.
I did shatter that thing. Shattered that thing.
Yeah. But no, so I think that's just been awesome, and I've really enjoyed that today. And look, I'm sure that will help a lot of people, and I know that's exactly what you like to do.
Thanks, Hackett. Honestly, likewise, bro. I mean, we've both been through our fair share of ups and downs publicly and privately. And as you know, my circle is super tight, and I love you like a brother. And honestly, it's awesome to see the journey that you've been on, and honestly, just welcoming a new baby. Geez, dude, it's so cool, so special, awesome to watch. I miss you like hell. As selfish as it is, I wish you lived next door. We need our compound.
I know. We'll still do that.
Tim, honestly, it's been great. For me, even though with the relationship and as close as I am with Hackett, I've been able to learn even more about him today. And I'm excited that somebody finally put this together, the two of us, to be able to just chat for 2 hours. Honestly, it was a treat. And we've listened to a lot of you over the years. I look forward to listening to a lot more. If it's okay, I'd love to grab your email from my team and stay in touch. And honestly, if you have any books or anything, I truly, it's something that as I said, I think I've read more books in the last 5 years, or listened to more books in the last 5 years than I have in the previous 30. So I think it's funny how life works, and how open I am, or how much more open I am now. And that wall is down a little bit more. Anything that, I'm always eager to learn, and yes, it's just been a fun process. So I can't thank you enough for having us on today. This is a true treat.
Yeah, total blast for me. An experiment, certainly, especially scattered across the world as we are. And it worked out. I'm so happy that we were able to come together. And thanks for the kind words also. The book that I would recommend more than any other is not one of mine. It's actually a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. It's a short book, DeMello, Anthony DeMello. And I'll share my email and cell with both of you guys, and you can feel free to reach out anytime, certainly. And hopefully we'll meet in person sometime. And it has been such a treat. So thank you both very much. And I wish you both a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you so much for having us, Tim.
Hey guys, this is Tim again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, this is 5 Bullet Friday. Do you want to get a short email from me? Would you enjoy getting a short email from me every Friday that provides a little morsel of fun before the weekend? And 5 Bullet Friday is a very short email where I share the coolest things I've found or that I've been pondering over the week. That could include favorite new albums that I've discovered. It could include gizmos and gadgets and all sorts of weird shit that I've somehow dug up in the world of the esoteric as I do. It could include favorite articles that I've read and that I've shared with my close friends, for instance. And it's very short. It's just a little tiny bite of goodness before you head off for the weekend. So if you want to receive that, check it out. Just go to 4hourworkweek.com. That's 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, and just drop in your email and you will get the very next one. And if you sign up, I hope you enjoy it. This episode is brought to you by Butcherbox. Butcherbox makes it easy for you to get high-quality, humanely raised meat that you can trust. They deliver delicious 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage breed pork, and wild-caught seafood directly to your door. For me, in the past few weeks, I've cooked a ton of their salmon, as well as 2 delicious barbecue rib racks in the oven. Super simple. They were the most delicious pork ribs I've ever prepared. My freezer is full of Butcherbox. When you become a member, you're joining a community focused on doing what's better for all. That means caring about the lives of animals, the livelihoods of farmers, treating our planet with respect, and enjoying better meals together. Butcherbox partners with folks, small farmers included, who believe in going above and beyond when it comes to caring for animals, the environment, and sustainability. And none of their meat is ever given antibiotics or added hormones. So how does it work? It's pretty simple. You choose your box and your delivery frequency. They offer 5 boxes, 4 curated box options, as well as the popular custom box, so you get exactly what you and or your family love. Box options and delivery frequencies can be customized to fit your needs. You can cancel at any time with no penalty. Butcherbox ships your order frozen for freshness and packed in an eco-friendly 100% recyclable box. It's easy, it's fast, it's convenient, I really, really enjoy it. And best of all, looking at the average cost, it works out to be less than $6 per meal. Get ready for game day or a cozy night in with Butcherbox. Right now, new members will get 1 rack of St. Louis-style ribs, 1 pack of bacon, and a pack of pulled pork for free in their first box by going to butcherbox.com/Tim. One more time, that's butcherbox.com/Tim. This episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. My God, am I in love with 8 Sleep. Good sleep is the ultimate game changer. More than 30% of Americans struggle with sleep, and I'm a member of that sad group. Temperature is one of the main causes of poor sleep, and heat has always been my nemesis. I've suffered for decades, tossing and turning, throwing blankets off, putting them back on, and repeating ad nauseum. But now, I am falling asleep in record time, faster than ever. Why? Because I'm using a simple device called the Pod Pro Cover by 8 Sleep. It's the easiest and fastest way to sleep at the perfect temperature. It pairs dynamic cooling and heating with biometric tracking to offer the most advanced but most user-friendly solution on the market. I polled all of you guys on social media about the best tools for sleep, enhancing sleep, and 8 Sleep was by far and away the crowd favorite. I mean, people were just raving fans of this. So I used it, and here we are. Add the Pod Pro cover to your current mattress and start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It also splits your bed in half, so your partner can choose a totally different temperature. My girlfriend runs hot all the time. She doesn't need cooling. She loves the heat, and we can have our own bespoke temperatures on either side, which is exactly what we're doing. Now, for me, and for many people, the result, 8 Sleep users fall asleep up to 32% faster, reduce sleep interruptions by up to 40%, and get more restful sleep overall. I can personally attest to this because I track it in all sorts of ways. It's the total solution for enhanced recovery, so you can take on the next day feeling refreshed. And now, my dear listeners, that's you guys, you can get $250 off of the Pod Pro cover. That's a lot. Simply go to 8sleep.com/Tim or use code TIM. That's 8, all spelled out, EIGHT, sleep.com/Tim, or use coupon code TIM, TIM. 8sleep.com/Tim for $200 off your Pod Pro cover.